Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. My brother Mason has always been an entitled a hole. I'm genuinely not sure where he got this from, but it's been in him ever since we were kids. Where me and my other siblings, one younger and one older brother, grew up to be quite non confrontational, my brother became the loud, mean bully. He had no respect for anyone around him, not for his siblings nor his parents. So, having empathy and respect for the people around him would be a thing that would be useless to even consider that he ever cared about the feelings of anyone else except for Larissa. Mason met Larissa during the first year of high school and had been in love with her ever since. No one knew that, though, not me, nor my brothers or his friends. He always had his tough demeanor, even when she was around him, so of course, when she and I started flirting with each other, I still vividly remember the day I came home from one of our initial dates. I was so happy because we were getting along great, and honestly, I thought my family would be very happy for me, and they were, except for none other than Mason. As soon as I got home, walked inside my entire room was trashed. It was a whole mess. Everything from my books to my clothes was scattered around, and I knew exactly who had done it, but not sure why. The mess was intense, so much so that I had to call my parents to inform them of the situation, just in case that someone might have broken in. Well, of course, that wasn't true, and it was none other than Mason who had done it. He was loud and proud about it too, claiming that I deserved it for going after his girl. That was the first time I blew up at him. This initiated our rocky relationship. Of course, before this, it wasn't like we had an amazing bond, but at least we were on speaking terms. But now that too had washed away. Well, I continue to date Larissa, and my brother continues to fume over our relationship. This rivalry continues between us until one day we find out that my brother had gone behind our backs and has started to date Larissa's cousin, who was in the same school as us. Now, this wouldn't have been an issue until Larissa told me more about her, and we came to find out that she was just like my brother. So much so that I'd call her the female version of my brother. Well, they start dating during the senior year of high school and decide to get into the same college. All seems rainbows for my brother because he's met a girl who is just like him, and also who is rich and will let him unleash his dominating personality on her. He's living the dreams while living with her in her parents' apartment, her very strict conservative parents' apartment. At this point, too, he had been minimally in contact with us, meeting me and Larissa during holidays. I thought we were cool at that point. I thought we were now grown adults with partners of our own, but boy, that was far from the case, as right after being back for first Christmas from college, my brother tried to touch Larissa inappropriately after being drunk. This was it for me. Even after Larissa said she didn't want to press charges, I knew I had to cut him out, and so most of my family. This enraged my brother, and I guess he had this entire phase where he wanted to prove to us his worth and make us regret cutting him off. So he took a bunch of loans from the bank on Nikita's, his girlfriend, house and borrowed quite a bit of money from our relatives to start up a business. Well, I have to admit that this business really took off. From what I heard, my brother made quite a lot of money from it and also spent it all with the same intensity. So when his business started failing after 2 years, he had no money to get by. He had even dropped out of college, and Nikita's house was taken away by the bank, and there he was, broke and homeless, along with his girlfriend, who was now pregnant and disowned by her family for being a disgrace. After we all had found out this news, we didn't really give him a helping hand because of what he had done to Larissa, and all I had known was that he was living in a run-down apartment in another state. Years and years passed since I or anyone had been in contact with him. Recently, my mom passed away due to health-related issues. This death has obviously been hard on not only me, but on every one of us. My mom was the rock of our family, so her death hit us very hard. Well, her funeral took place a couple of days back where everyone was present. My mom was loved by everyone, so the crowd was huge at her funeral. And so my other brothers thought of inviting Mason would be appropriate because at least this time he would have some guilt and maybe ask for forgiveness. I wasn't aware of this, which obviously hurt since my very pregnant wife was there as well, but that is a completely different story. Well, I'm at the funeral bawling my eyes out as this is the last time I'll be seeing my mom. Everyone is tearing up while comforting each other until we see Mason. It took me a couple of minutes to comprehend the fact that if what I was seeing was actually real, because, mind you all, it had been years since I last saw Mason, and he looked extremely out of shape. Alongside him was Nikita, who looked exhausted. It was like within the span of 9 years, they had aged double, and I understood the reason why once I saw four kids follow them behind. Being shocked would be an understatement, but I knew before anything I needed to take Larissa to a safe spot. So I told her to sit in the car before I called up my sister in law, asking her to pick her up. And boy, by the time I returned, all hell broke loose. I stood there witnessing my dad for the first time slapping my brother. I know it was wrong of him, and so my brother and I restrained him before he could do more. As soon as my brother saw me, he started venting, asking me if I was happy to ruin him, how I won't be blackmailing my parents and making me their favorite, how I was putting up this act of loving Larissa, and how I had only gotten her pregnant to one up him so that I could take up all the money that my mom has left behind for his kids. I stood there in silence, literally having no clue as to what he was talking about. It was just like this back and forth going on between my dad and him, while all of us, including Nikita, stayed quiet. My dad told him that he was done with him, that he had only supported him because of my mom, and how he is ready to kick him out of the house. I had started to get angry at this point because FFS, I just wanted to say bye to my mom for the last time. And so I ran off to see if there was any security that I could call to get Mason and his family out. And oh boy, even before I could leave, Nikita screamed that she was pregnant and how we all were ruining her pregnancy. Huh? At this point, I had enough and just ran off to call security, who made them leave the private cemetery. This is where I might be the a hole, though, because suddenly everyone except for my wife, brothers, and dad are against me. All the relatives claimed that me and my dad were wrong for not letting Mason mourn the death of his mom, which he was apparently doing by screaming at me and making a scene at the funeral. I also caused distress to Nikita by doing absolutely nothing. I'm really not sure if I handled this situation properly. I know I was under a lot of stress, so it is completely valid that I might be an a hole because I was responding under emotions and not with my mind. Any advice would be much appreciated. AITA? A lot of you were asking for more information about the situation. My previous post was filled with information I knew about the situation, and so I have made this update dedicated to inform you of everything that's been happening. I talked to my dad the day after the funeral, and that is when he explained everything to me. Things make a lot of sense now. So basically, ever since my brother lost his business, him and Nikita had been quite literally homeless and had no place to live. They lived in their car for a couple of months until my mom found out about their condition and started letting them live in a house she owned in another state. Ever since then, my mom and my dad have been in contact with them, sort of, just keeping up with the well being of my brother's children because at this point, we all know how my mother and Nikita are. So, the reason why Mason showed up at the funeral was to fight the inheritance my mom left us all. Mason expected much more than just a house because apparently he deserves more after everything I put him through. This had been an ongoing argument between my mom and him, and once he found out my mom passed away without switching the will, he drove himself to the funeral and was let in due to the invite sent by my brothers to the funeral. The more I hear about this man, the more disgust I feel for him. I already had no respect for him, but the way he just acted at my mom's funeral after everything she did for him just proves that he's some sort of psychopath, only caring for himself. My dad and I will be meeting up with a lawyer soon to start the eviction process, so I will update you all later. Hi, all. It's been 6 months since my last post, and I am happy to say that we were able to kick Mason to the curb while successfully moving Nikita and the kids to her parents' place. This happened right on the day that we were going to see the lawyers. Nikita messaged me, asking me if there was any way she could call me and have a conversation. Although I was nervous, I told her I would, and right before I left for the appointment, we talked on the phone. On the call, Nikita opened up to me about how she was done with Mason. She had been for a while, but he has trapped her into living with him by making her a stay at home mom, and after so many kids, she really thought there was no way out. So when she heard my dad say that he was going to kick them out of the house, it felt like a breath of fresh air because she knew this was her chance to either run away or do something about the situation. So, as an attempt to ask for help, she decided to call me. I knew I was taking a risk to help her because, like I had mentioned, Nikita was a lot like my brother, but with our current interaction, it also looked like she was desperate for help. And as a soon to be parent, it hurt my heart to just turn down a mother. So I talked to Larissa, who talked to Nikita's parents, who was shocked to find out that they now had 5 grandchildren. They immediately agreed upon taking her in on the condition that she divorce Mason and stay as far away from him as she could. That's exactly what she wanted, and so they made a deal. As soon as my brother was served the eviction notice of 2 months, she would move out of the house, and boy, watching the color drain out my brother's face after one bad thing after the other happened to him was satisfying to say the least. But unfortunately, I cannot say that he has learned anything from it. Currently living in a rundown apartment, my brother already has a new girlfriend, much younger than him. This is not surprising, but just disappointing. The only thing I am happy about is having my nieces and nephews closer to us and not living under the shadow of their dads anymore. NTA, you handled this perfectly with a lot of calmness. If I was in your place, I would most likely do something that was closer to your dad's response, and honestly, much needed for a person like your brother. It's good that you guys are calling him out for his entitlement because it's better late than never. NTA, Nikita and Mason both acted like high school couples who were throwing a fit for not getting their way. Your dad should have done what he did way earlier, to be honest. I, 27, bought my first house last year with my husband, Marcelo. It is 4 bedrooms and 1.5 baths. I organized a master's and office from Marcelo, WFH. The smallest bedroom has been prepped to become a nursery, and the final bedroom is a guest bedroom with the idea it will eventually become a kids' room. Recently, my grandma was visiting my new home with my cool uncle, Rocco, his wife, Kate, and my uncle Richard, 60, male. I don't get along with my uncle Richard, but for some reason he absolutely loves Marcelo, so decided to tag along for the visit. Well, while I was making dinner for all of us, Marcelo took my family on a tour of the home. When we finally sat down to eat, my uncle Richard asked where my brother, 20, Robbie's room would be. I replied, obviously, if he is visiting, he would stay in the guest room like any other guest. My uncle Richard said he meant it when my brother comes to live with me. For context, my brother has autism and has difficulty with work independent living. He currently lives with my father in another state. When he was born, my parents were both addicted, and my mother had severe PPD. At the age of 8, I started raising him basically as a parent. I was the one who had to ask a doctor when I was 13 to get him diagnosed and to receive aid. I cooked for him, changed diapers, corralled him from his eternal wandering, went to IEP meetings, etc. I love him and it isn't his fault, but I basically gave up my childhood for him. My dad, who has been sober for 11 years, currently takes care of Robbie. However, My dad has major health issues and does not expect to live past the next 10 years. It is common knowledge in my family that Robbie will be my responsibility when my father passes. Well, I told him Robbie wouldn't live with me. When I was looking for a home, the one I purchased was high on my list since there is a large group home a block away, 5 minutes walk, for people with disabilities. My residents there have ASD, and it is within walking distance to the grocery store and a few other locations that hire the residents for part time work. I said, Robbie, if he is unable to stay in the home he is now in, an area he enjoys, would move to an apartment at the group home nearby. In the meantime, it seems like he should stay where he is. My Uncle Richard told me I was a bad sister and I couldn't just abandon my brother. I told him that I already sacrificed my childhood and I won't sacrifice my future children's. Plus, I see my option as giving my brother more independence, not abandonment. Furthermore, it is more important to do what Robbie is most comfortable with, which for now seems to remain in the city he currently lives in with my dad. Finally, I told my uncle that if he is that concerned that Robbie lives with family, that he has several empty rooms in his house that he can use. My Uncle Richard called me an a-hole and stormed out of my home. My grandma and husband agreed I was in the right. However, my Uncle Rocco and Kate think I could have been a bit nicer. NTA, your reasoning was perfect. And a gold medal for saying that your uncle had rooms to spare if he felt so strongly about the issue. NTA, you are absolutely doing the right thing, and you don't have to be nice to them. They weren't being nice to you when they accused you. Context. I, 19 female, start college next week. Nothing crazy, just community before transferring. When I was 16, my stepdad's aunt gave me $5,000 for college. My stepdad deposited it into his account so I wouldn't have access to it until I was 18, which I was skeptical about. But okay, since my mom is usually the one that recklessly spends or uses my money. Well, about a month ago, I found out that the money was gone. Apparently, it was used for my mom's car payment and the mortgage during COVID. Obviously, I was angry and upset. She showed me her regular car payment, and I kind of just let it subside. Well, today I told my grandma about it in casual conversation, and she brought up some points I hadn't thought of. Number one, my mom was shopping beyond her means during COVID with her stimulus money. Number two, I was never told, and the check was written in my name. So, how was my stepdad able to cash it? Lastly, his family more than likely doesn't know. She's livid about it, and usually I'm very confident and argumentative, but I know this would cause a massive rift in my family, and I don't know if I want to deal with that. Anyhow, WIBTA? My mom was still in college and was a waitress, so she wasn't making much money. My stepdad worked for Stat Medvac, but due to some issues with higher management, was out of work for a few weeks. Thank you to everyone that offered support and opinions on the situation. I talked to some family on my mom's side and have come to somewhat of a conclusion. At some point in the next 2 weeks, I'll be sitting down with my parents and coming to an agreement on how the money will be paid back over the course of the next 3 years. I'm graduating early. If during the next year I don't receive any money or assistance from them, then I'll be talking to the aunt and my stepdad's family as a final resort. I'll also be meeting with a counselor from my school this week to get resources for therapy so I can healthily process whatever may happen over the next few months and to make sure I've processed any past trauma healthily. If anything happens, I'll post a second update to this. Thank you. NTA, your parental figures went right behind your back and stole from you, then didn't tell you till you noticed it. NTA, if your stepdad's aunt can get a copy of the check through her bank, you can look at it to see if they forged your signature. She may not be so cooperative since it is her relative that stole the money.